I moved into a new house a few days ago, and I don't mean new as the house itself, which was constructed in the late 1800s. Outside the house is mostly covered by the tall green strands of grass, circled by a wooden fence. Along the fence is an old scarecrow. It was mostly composed of old fabric, wood, and moldy styrofoam. Half of its face was illuminated by the bright light of the moon, while the other half was submerged in shadow. Its eyes were made of old stones, squished into a moldy styrofoam ball, and topped with an old straw hat. I walk away from the window and sit down on my bed. Darkness coating the walls of the room, like a blanket covering a bed. I look to the left to only be greeted by glowing red numbers. 1:35 a.m., the clock read. I lay down in bed and slowly drift off to sleep. After what seemed to be hours, I wake up to the sound of metal against metal, faintly coming from the other side of the window. I sit up and stare in the direction of the noise. I couldn't see the ground outside, so I get up and walk towards the window and look down. I was met with the scarecrow still standing in the cold, dark night. By the time I had reached the window, the noise had stopped. I look in all directions, scanning the entire yard in the process, but to my surprise, there was nothing out of the ordinary. Well, that was until I noticed something strange. Something was off about the scarecrow. It looked different. It looked older. It appeared as if a century had gone by while I was sleeping. It was definitely much older now. I scanned my surroundings, and everything was the same. Nothing seemed any older than it was before I went to sleep. The scarecrow had more mold. The stone eyes were smaller and more gray, and they had a slight reddish tan, almost as if they were glowing. I turned to look at my clock, only noticing that the numbers weren't numbers. The 7-segment display had strange symbols that appeared alien. I walk over and flip on the light switch, but when I did, something weird happened. When I flipped the switch, the light bulb had delayed a little before actually turning on. I didn't really pay attention to it, and walked over to my desk, which had happened to be right in front of the window, and I sit down and log on to my computer, which happened to be a big chunky thing. I moved my mouse cursor over the taskbar to check the time, and noticed the time, date, and day were all strange symbols. They appeared to be Greek letters. I also noticed that the internet wasn't working. I shut down my computer and stare at the wall, trying to possibly make sense of the current situation. That's when I hear a loud bang come from outside. I jump out of my chair to look out the window, only to see the scarecrow was gone. I start panicking, trying to find where the scarecrow could have possibly gone. Then I hear something. The sound of old cloth and wood, stretching and pulling, faintly coming from the darkness of the stairs outside my bedroom. I immediately get up and shut the door as quickly as possible, locking it in the process. I reach in my pocket to grab my phone and dial 911, only to be left with a dead signal. I hop into the bed and stare at the door, waiting for something to happen. The sound was getting closer, so close that it sounded like it was right outside my bedroom door. That's when I wake up. I look in the direction of the clock to see that it was now perfectly working. 6:12 a.m. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon. I get out of bed to look out the window. When I did, my heart dropped. The scarecrow still wasn't there. Weeks have passed now, and I still have no clue where the scarecrow went. And sometimes, when I'm sleeping late at night, I hear the sound of stretching fabric and wood.